and another effective one. Matthew breaks a tackle, breaks another, gets a block. There are no flags and the race is on. And Matthew goes 90.
Burrow with the snap. Here comes the blitz. Burrow steps away from it, throws, catch made! Justin Jefferson has it at the 38, racing down the far line, sideline, 10-5, touchdown Tigers!
Another play fake by Burrow, and a deep strike, and an open receiver, Jamar Chase, another touchdown!
Daniels pulls it, takes it himself, he's got the sideline! Jane Daniels off to the races! And a bang back inside, he takes it to the house! 85 yards for Daniel!
Go ahead and say it, Ed.
Go Tigers!
Of the Geauxld Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Doe. Man, what a crazy, wacky 3 weeks it's been since LSU let go of head coach Brian Kelly. And it seems like every day we get further along, LSU or the administration or something happens and we get in the news and do something else. So as of today, it is Veterans Day, 11/11, when I'm recording this. Brian Kelly and his team have officially filed a lawsuit against LSU. No, not against LSU, sorry, against the state. But they're seeking damages, trying to get the full payout of his contract, the full $54 million. Now, there's two sides to this, obviously, and we will discuss some coaching stuff later, but obviously this is a pressing matter. I see both sides of it. If I'm Brian Kelly, I want every penny that's due to me. I want it all. You know, you told me you were going to pay X amount of dollars in this contract, and I want what I'm owed. You know, pay me what I'm owed. And I see LSU side of it, obviously, where you got a coach didn't fulfill their obligations in living up to the performance standards in the contract, and you don't want to pay that guy the full $54 million. So if I can save any penny, any million, any 100,000, whatever it may be, I'm going to go through all measures to see what I can do to save myself some money, because all the money that we save can go to possibly another coach. And if you can save $10 million off Brian Kelly, allot that to next year's team, allot that to a coaching contract, that's more amicable. I like that option more. But it's gotten messy, guys. I mean, has there been a day maybe since Brian Kelly was let go where we weren't in the news for something as an administration, as a school, as a program? The governor, everybody is all over everywhere. LSU is buzzing. We have a national brand. It's a great national brand so far. But, all the attention can be a little bit of a negative. And I'm seeing things online, and message boards and everything about people kind of freaking out about, hey, this is going to scare off X candidate. Hey, this is going to scare off X candidate. That may be the case. I'm not going to sit here and confirm anything. I don't have any sources. I don't know anything. But, as this thing continues to get more and more crazy to where, LSU side in the report, I think if you go online, Pete Nakos has the full lawsuit, the 50 pages of it. And I think there's like LSU's representatives were saying that Scott Woodward really didn't have the authority to fire Brian Kelly, and he's still in this period of whether they're going to decide to fire him with cause or not. I mean, it's all crazy. I'm not a legal expert. Don't have any law advice. I'm not acting as a lawyer for either side or acting like I know. Just seeing what's out there. It's actually out there. It's public. So you can go dive into the report yourself, dive into the filing, and see what it says for yourself. But just kind of skimming and scamming what I saw. I mean, it's just, what do you say? It's a little embarrassing. It makes us look like we don't have things in order. And I know, look, this will be smoothed over. I came on here and told you guys a couple episodes ago that LSU is going to pay the next coach anywhere between $10 and $15 million to coach football. I think they're going to get a good guy. but it may not be the top echelon guys, which we'll get to a little bit later. May not be Lane Kiffin. It may have never been Marcus Freeman. It was probably never going to be Dan Lanning. So out of those next options, LSU has to decide which coach fits them best. I'm going to talk about a couple of options where, people aren't necessarily throwing these guys' names out as like number one options, but let's just say Marcus Freeman, Dan Lanning, and Lane Kiffin are off the table. Who are some other guys that I would like to see LSU go after realistically that I think we have a shot of realistically getting? The first name that comes to my mind is Josh Heupel at Tennessee. I know. It's not that sexy of a hire. And somebody brought up on the message board earlier about how his offense has never really had an elite quarterback. I think Hendon Hooker was pretty elite that 1 year. I know it was 1 year at Tennessee, and I know it didn't translate well to the NFL. And that's another thing about his offense. They say it doesn't translate well to the NFL. At this point, I only want what's good for LSU players at LSU. Obviously, I want them to be successful in the league and go on and have, Jamar Chase money, Justin Jefferson money, Joe Burrow money, Derek Stingley money. That's awesome. But I want them to perform in LSU while they're at LSU. And then once they get to the NFL, it's the NFL's problem to decide how they want to use them to get the best out of them. So all this stuff about, it's a high school offense, it's a rinky-dink offense. It plays in space. It's what you should do nowadays offensively. He puts his players in space. He puts his players in space. Got my tongue tied there. He puts them in space and forces the defense to make open field tackles. And if you force the defense to make open field tackles for 60 minutes, all it takes is a couple of slip-ups and you got some big plays here and there. So, yes, it's not the most extravagant of offenses. It's not the 2019 or 2023 offense. It's a little gimmicky per se, but using the athletes that we have in space, it just seems like a match made possibly in heaven as far as what we can do with that type of head coach at the helm. And then you don't have to worry about the offensive side of the ball because Heupel has that taken care of. And that's something that I want out of our next head coach. I want them to be able to be a master on one side of the ball, preferably offense, and just let the defensive coordinator handle that side of the ball and not worry about my side of the ball. Head coach is still going to oversee everything. The OC is going to call the plays, but I want us to have somebody that we can fall back on that we know in a crunch can design, call plays, has a scheme, has an identity, and Josh Heupel fits that. And a lot of people throw out, what's he won at Tennessee? What has he done at Tennessee? Well, I got a question for you. What candidate has done something? How many head coaches actively have won a national championship? You have Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney, and who's the other one? I can't even remember the other one. Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney, and Ryan Day. None of those guys are leaving their destination to come to LSU. You don't want Dabo Swinney, and Ryan Day and Kirby Smart aren't leaving their jobs to come to coach at LSU. So this mentality of if you haven't won a national championship, you're not good enough. Who are we going to get that's good enough? I'll wait on your suggestions on who has won a national championship that is gettable for LSU that we can get as our next head coach. And I'll wait. You see, there's nobody. Okay. So I said this before, every option that we look at, every coach that's out there, every coach that's attainable, everybody has warts. Everybody's got freckles. It's just on us as a organization to decide which one we can deal with, which of the shortcomings we can take the most. There's a pretty girl there, but she's got acne. There's a pretty girl there, but she's got a big zit or whatever it may be. We got to decide on which one we're willing to dance with and go to prom with and marry and propose to and spend the rest of our lives with, right? So let's get this notion out of here of hey, because someone like Josh Heupel hasn't won at Tennessee, I don't want him. Well, who do you want? Who do you want that's won? Because I just gave you the three coaches that are active coaches that have national championships on their resume. And you're not going to get two of them. And the other one you don't want. You already beat him earlier this year. with a fired head coach. You beat him earlier this year. But because he's got Dabo Swinney's got a ring, according to some people, he's good, right? We should go get Dabo. No. So quit it. Stop it. Josh Heupel, very respected, an offensive mind. I could get down with that hire. Okay. Another one is Brian Hartline. And Hartline is very interesting because Ryan Day is an offensive guy, so you don't know how much say or programming or what he had. You don't know what he actually has his hands on over there in Ohio State. And it's scary because that's the only school where he's coached. It's not like he's coached at Alabama and coached at Tennessee and coached at Georgia and had offenses awesome there, and then went back to his alma mater as the OC and he has them humming. It's not the case. Would it be a gamble? Absolutely. But, Hartline is known as a fantastic recruiter. His wide receivers are always first-round talents. Look at Emeka Egbuka, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, all the guys, aside from LSU, he's put out all the other great receivers in the NFL, basically. So we know that he can coach the position. We know that he can recruit well because he's an awesome recruiter. But the only hesitation with someone like Brian Hartline is, does he actually draw up the game plan? How much control does he have? Is it just a system? Is Ohio State just Ryan Day has everything in place and it doesn't matter who's behind the helm, they're going to have an awesome offense? But that's a name. That's not one of the regular ones that we're already hearing that I thought would be possibly interesting to discuss. Another one is Will Stein over at Oregon, lastly. And, well, not last. I'm going to talk about one more. Well, Kenny Dillingham's the other one, but he's out there, right? He's out there. So what about Will Stein? Let's say Will Stein had Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, and now Dante Moore. All be effective quarterbacks in his system. Now, he's a little bit easier to decipher because Dan Lanning's a defensive guy, so we know the offense is all Will Stein. Would you be willing to take an opportunity on a guy like Will Stein? We're in between a rock and a hard place, honestly, guys, because there's not a lot of ready-made, big-name coaching candidates that would just knock your socks off. I think there's Lane Kiffin. I think there's Marcus Freeman, Dan Lanning, obviously, that aren't attainable. But after that, it's just a big group of guys. I don't know if there's anybody that necessarily sticks out to say, hey, this guy's the next head coach. He's the next big thing. He's the next sure thing. That makes it fun, but it also makes it dicey because what does LSU turn? If they don't get a yes from those top three guys, where do you go? How far down the list do they go till they get to some of these offensive coordinators? Some of the statistics will show you that if you give some of these elite offensive coordinators a big-time job, like a Oregon, like a Georgia with Kirby Smart, you give these guys the assets and the resources and everything, NIL and the money and the players to be successful, they can do it. So I bring up Will Stein's name. Oregon's offense is one of the better ones in the country. It has been for a while. And he's had multiple different quarterbacks win in multiple different ways and put up statistics. Is he a guy that will leave Oregon for an LSU head coaching opportunity? It seems like it would be a no-brainer, right? LSU would pay him $9-10 million. How would he turn that down? And he's a coordinator making, $3 million maybe at the max. If that, he's probably not making that. So that's a potential option. Flipping to the other side of the ball, like I said, I'm really in on getting an offensive guy. But what about Glenn Schumann at Georgia? He's been in Alabama, been at Georgia. He's been Kirby Smart to Nick Saban. 6 national championships on his resume. Awesome defenses year in and year out. Obviously, Georgia is massive in recruiting. What are you willing to make an offer out there to him and get somebody that's under that Kirby Saban tree and see if he could be the next Dan Lanning? He's in his mid-30s, but he hasn't done it before. So that's why I say it's not as easy and as cookie cutter as it may seem, because LSU may have to take a chance on a guy, especially with all this crap that's going on with us being in the news every 5 seconds and every 5 minutes for doing something stupid, or saying something stupid, or Brian Kelly, or what it may be. We just look jumbled up. I don't believe we're as jumbled as it looks, but I'm a fan, so I may be blinded in the way I see things. And these coaches and agents from these other schools may see LSU as a place that I just don't want to touch right now. I don't want to put my hands anywhere close to anything with them. But Glenn Schumann, been with Kirby for a long time, been the defensive coordinator. Do you take a chance and pull from a more comfortable tree? LSU's obviously more comfortable with a Saban tree, and Kirby tree at this point. He'd be part of the Kirby tree, but it still all kind of falls under Saban. So is that a guy you take a chance on? And, like I said, you get yourself to this position where where do you go? Eric Morris is a name out there in North Texas, but I don't think LSU goes that kind of far off the beaten path. There's just, he hasn't done a lot as far as winning a long time, and I just want to talk about people that just haven't really been talked about as the everyday candidates that we may see. I don't see a lot of people talking about Josh Heupel's name starting to come up more now. I don't see a lot of people talking about Will Stein possibly, or Brian Hartline, or Glenn Schumann. So out of the options that I presented, you have a head coach in Josh Heupel, who's been a head coach in the SEC. He knows the land. He's an offensive mind. He's done it. He's been productive for a while. He's real respected on the offensive side. Tennessee does well in recruiting. That fit, I would consider that a very good hire. It maybe not be as sexy as a Lane Kiffin or Dan Lanning or Marcus Freeman, obviously, but if Josh Heupel is the best coach that you can get, you got a pretty good coach, and you can trust that the offensive side of the ball will be productive year in and year out with the talent that the state produces at receiver. You get your transfer quarterback in the portal. This team could be fun to watch next year if it's something like that. With Will Stein, Brian Hartline, it'll be more, learning on the job. It'll be their first time being a head coach. So do you go that route? Same route with Glenn Schumann. You got a more trusted tree in Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, but do you go that route to where you pick coordinators, or you go for a guy that maybe isn't the sexiest guy out there, and you say, hey, let's go get Josh Heupel because we know our offense is going to be productive every year? And the names are out there. I think the odds came out today. Nick Saban is now the number one option. Guys, I would be floored. Everybody you talk to would be floored if Nick Saban is the head coach at LSU. Would I love it? Absolutely. It's the greatest coach of all time. Why would you not be impressed and love that if LSU could pull that off? It will send resounding shockwaves through sports in general. And it would show that LSU, as disconjointed as they look, was able to go pull the greatest college coach out of retirement to come back and finish his story at LSU. I sound like Cody Rhodes in WWE. Finish the story. It would be cool, though, but I don't think it's going to happen. Didn't include Joe Brady. Joe Brady's a name that's out there, but he did not like college football recruiting while he was here. Guys, he left. He was running out of the door smoking after the 2019 season. So I just don't think that he's a viable option. I love Kelvin Shepherd as an option. I really do like Shep as an option, but his name's out there more so than the guys that I kind of mentioned. He's been there from day one as a former alumni, as a guy who's got a bright future in the NFL. I think Shep is going to be an awesome coach. Do you go get a guy that's never been a head coach? It's sort of the similar argument that we're talking about with any coordinator. Do you go get a guy that doesn't know how to run a program? I'm not speaking to him in general, but just in coordinators. Do you go get a guy that's never ran an SEC billion-dollar corporation, that's never hired coaches, that's never recruited as a head coach, that's never set a recruiting board? It's a lot, it's a lot to it being a head coach. Politics involved. We see how big politics are in Louisiana right now. Do you go get a guy that's never known how to handle that and throw him in the fire of everything that we got going on right now? I don't think so. But I just want to throw some options out there. Where do we go from here? We have an Arkansas game this week. It's going to be an early one, 11 11 o'clock kickoff. Taylor Green scares me. He does. I'm going to talk about that later in the week. But, yeah, that's where we are right now. Brian Kelly has officially filed a lawsuit against, trying to get his money, which he's due. No real buzz quite yet in the coaching search. I don't expect things to pick up until closer to the end of the month. You'll start to hear more stuff as the season comes towards an end. But I just want to throw some names out there that aren't names that we normally hear. Josh Heupel, Will Stein, Brian Hartline, and Glenn Schumann were just names I wanted to go through today just to talk about, hey, who are some guys that I would be interested in if we don't get the big fish? And those are my guys. So this has been the Geauxld Standard Podcast, where we love purple, but it's all gold. I'm your host, Doe, signing off. And as always, go Tigers and play net.